The Call of Cthulhu. Chapter 1. The Horror in Clay. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little. But some day the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. The notes of my great-uncle, Professor Angel, aroused in me a curiosity that soon turned into a consuming dread. The paper spoke of an eldritch bas-relief, carved by the trembling hands of a delirious artist, depicting a monstrous creature of cosmic horror, Cthulhu. With a pulpy, octopus-like head and a grotesque, rubbery body, the idol hinted at horrors older than mankind itself. Among my uncle's effects, I discovered accounts of dreams, shared nightmares that plagued artists, poets, and madmen alike, whispering the name Cthulhu. Strange cults, hidden in shadowed jungles and the forgotten corners of civilization, worshipped this being, believing that it slumbered beneath the waves, waiting for the stars to align. Chapter 2. The Tale of Inspector Legrasse. Inspector Legrasse, a man hardened by the filth of human corruption, had no patience for superstition. Yet even he had been shaken by the events in the swamps of Louisiana. While investigating the disappearance of local women and children, he and his men stumbled upon a grotesque ritual, a gathering of cultists in obscene worship. At the center of their madness stood an idol, a replica of the one in my uncle's collection. The devotees shrieked in a language older than any known to man, their bodies writhing in unnatural ecstasy as they chanted, Chingluimilduinaf Cthulhu Rlio Gonagelftain. It was then that Legrasse first heard the name Cthulhu. The captured cultists spoke of their Dark Lord's slumber, how it would awaken when the time was right. They claimed their ancestors had whispered the same words, passing them down through untold generations. The horror, they said, was real. Chapter 3. The Madness of the Sea. Further investigation led me to the journal of Gustav Johansen, a Norwegian sailor who had survived an encounter beyond human comprehension. His ship had come across an island that should not have existed, a place of unnatural geometry where cyclopean ruins rose from the depths of the Pacific. This was R'lyeh, the sunken city where Cthulhu lay dreaming. Johansen described the awakening, the horror that defied sanity. Cthulhu stirred, a thing vast beyond reckoning, emerging from its slumber. Those who beheld it were driven mad, their minds unable to grasp the full enormity of its existence. And then, inexplicably, the great beast retreated, as if some cosmic force had forced it back into sleep. But the sailors knew, it had only been a taste of the horror yet to come. The stars would one day be right again. Chapter 4. The Whisper of the Dead. I sit now in the dim glow of my study, surrounded by the documents that have shattered my peace. Madness lurks at the edges of my reason, for I know that the world I thought I understood is but a thin veil covering horrors beyond imagining. The cult still thrives in hidden places. The dreams continue to spread. The stars will align once more. When that day comes, the world will know the true meaning of terror. And as I write these final words, a shadow moves outside my window. The whispering has begun anew. Kanchaknapung R6F. They are calling your name too. The Shadow over Innsmouth. Chapter 1. The Forbidden Journey. It was during the winter of 1927 that I embarked upon the ill-fated journey to the decrepit town of Innsmouth. I had been tracing my ancestry when I stumbled upon references to the isolated coastal settlement, an ominous place shunned by surrounding communities. Stories of strange customs, a peculiar fish-like appearance among its residents, and whispered rumors of ancient pacts with the deep sea piqued my morbid curiosity. I resolved to visit the place despite the warnings, arriving by a rickety bus that reeked of brine and decay. The driver, a silent, sullen man with disturbingly large, unblinking eyes, said little as we trundled along the winding road. When at last I arrived, a sense of foreboding settled over me. The town was a ghostly ruin of its former self, with rotting buildings and streets that bore the stench of centuries of stagnation. Chapter 2. The Secrets of the Esoteric Order. As I wandered the damp streets, I noticed furtive glances from shadowed alleys. The few residents I encountered bore an uncanny resemblance to one another. Wide, staring eyes, receding chins, and an unnatural slouching gait. It was in the town's only boarding house that I met Zadok Allen, a withered old drunkard willing to speak of Innsmouth's dark history in exchange for liquor. He spoke in whispers, eyes darting to every shadow, as he told of the esoteric order of Dagon, a secretive cult that had taken control of the town generations ago. The townsfolk had struck a bargain with monstrous beings from the ocean depths, the deep ones. In exchange for bountiful fishing and untold riches, they interbred with these creatures, producing offspring that slowly transformed into something inhuman. "The deep ones live forever," he murmured, his voice trembling. "And someday they come for us all." Chapter 3. The Night of the Chase. That evening, the air grew thick with an unnatural stillness. The Innsmouth inhabitants seemed to vanish from sight, as if lying in wait. My unease deepened when I realized that the doors of my boarding house had been bolted from the outside. Panic set in as I heard soft, slithering footsteps in the corridor beyond. A grotesque gurgling chant rose from the streets. Cthulhu Fdane. I escaped through the window just as something heavy and wet slammed against my door. I ran blindly through the alleyways, pursued by the lumbering forms of creatures that were neither fully human nor fully beast. Their fish-like eyes gleamed in the moonlight as they whispered in a guttural tongue, beckoning me to surrender. Chapter 4. The Transformation. I barely escaped Innsmouth that night, yet the horrors of my experience did not end. Strange dreams plagued me, filled with visions of sunken cities beneath the sea and voices calling me home. My reflection in the mirror began to change, subtly at first, then unmistakably. My eyes grew larger, my skin roughened, and an unnatural urge to seek the ocean took hold. It was then that I understood the dreadful truth. I was one of them. The ancestry I had sought to uncover had revealed its sinister legacy. One day soon I would hear the final call of the deep ones, and I would no longer be able to resist. Even as I write these words, I hear my name echoing in the waves, and I know I am not alone. At Kanchaknapung, R6F, they are calling for you too. Title: The Shadow over Innsmouth. Chapter 1. The Journey to Innsmouth. I had always been a lover of history and architecture, and my trip through New England was meant to be an exploration of forgotten towns and crumbling colonial settlements. It was during my inquiries at a small bookstore in Arkham that I first heard of Innsmouth, a place spoken of only in whispers. The locals shunned it, their faces darkening at its mention. A drunken old man at the train station had muttered, "Keep away from that place, boy. There's a shadow over Innsmouth." Curious beyond reason, I boarded the rickety bus that ran once a day between Arkham and Innsmouth, eager to uncover the secrets that lay hidden in its mist-choked streets. Chapter 2. First Glimpses of a Cursed Town. As we neared the town, I noticed that the air grew heavy, thick with the scent of brine and decay. The buildings, once grand examples of Federalist architecture, were crumbling under the weight of neglect. Many were abandoned, their windows gaping like empty eye sockets. The streets were eerily silent, save for the distant crash of waves against the rocky shore. The people who remained were grotesque. Their skin had a sickly pallor, their eyes bulged unnaturally, and their mouths were unervingly wide. They walked with a strange, shuffling gait, avoiding my gaze as I stepped off the bus. Something was terribly wrong with Innsmouth. Chapter 3. The Esoteric Order of Dagon. I took lodging at the crumbling Gilman House Inn, where the stench of salt and mold clung to everything. That evening I ventured into the town square, where an imposing structure dominated the scene. The Esoteric Order of Dagon, a church with no cross, its door carved with hideous depictions of sea creatures and alien hieroglyphs. An old drunkard named Zadok Allen was willing to speak to me after a few drinks. His sunken eyes darted around as he whispered his tale. The townsfolk had made a pact with something in the ocean. Generations ago, Captain Obed Marsh had brought back knowledge of the deep ones. Ancient beings from the abyss, neither human nor fish, but something far worse. They gave us gold, fish, power. But we had to give 'em something in return, Zodok slurred. They take our young ones. And in time we change. I felt my blood turn to ice. Chapter 4. The pursuit begins. That night I attempted to leave, but the bus had mysteriously stopped running. I decided to flee on foot, but as I crossed through the darkened alleys, the town came alive. Figures emerged from the shadows, bulging eyes glinting in the moonlight, webbed fingers reaching out. They moved inhumanly fast. I ran through the twisting streets, ducking through abandoned buildings, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I could hear the wet slap of bare, webbed feet against the cobblestones as they pursued me. Chapter 5. The Escape and the Truth. I barely made it out, stumbling through the salt marshes, the cries of the deep ones echoing behind me. I never spoke of what I had seen, but the nightmares never ceased. And then I began to change. One evening, staring into the mirror, I saw my own eyes, wider, bulging, my skin taking on a ghastly hue. The truth clawed at my mind. I was one of them. The shadow of Innsmouth had followed me, and one day I would return to the depths. Epilogue, the call of the deep. As I prepare to leave this world of men, I hear a whisper in my dreams. A name floating through the tides of time. See you soon at Kanchaknapong R6F.